Hi everyone, this is Sydney Otamanchuk from InsideScientific, the online environment for life science webinars, virtual events, interviews, and educational content that helps you do your best work. Our Real Science sessions focus on connecting with the researchers, educators, and industry professionals from all walks of life that make scientific discovery and innovation possible. Every year, we run a joint webinar series with the American Physiological Society, and this year's focus is on women's health. So we're also partnering with the Society for Women's Health Research. Our next guest on our podcast today is Dr. Rachel Buckley, Associate Professor of Neurology at Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School. She's an upcoming speaker in our series who's here to share about her research and why she's passionate about women's health. Rachel, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
I'd like to get started just getting to know a little bit about your research, if you could provide us with a quick summary.
I would love to. So my research is very focused on women's health, but I started out my research actually looking at whether women and men differ in their level of risk for Alzheimer's disease dementia, because there was actually a lot of controversy in the field. And what we have found is quite striking. So the two hallmark pathologies of Alzheimer's disease are tau tangles and amyloid plaques. You can actually visualize these on your images using positron emission tomography scans. And what we do is we look inside the brains of people who are still healthy and alive to see whether there are differences in these levels of tau tangles and amyloid plaques between men and women. And what we have found is that women show much higher levels of tau tangles than men. And we've started to try to figure out why that might be. So we look into whether menopause might play a role or hormone therapy use. We also look at the X chromosome. And what we found is that there are elements of this sort of sex biology that might differentiate men and women for their risk for Alzheimer's disease. So that's what makes me get up in the morning.
Wow, fantastic. That sounds so interesting. I can't wait to hear more about it. So can you just start off as well by letting us know how you became interested in women's health research and what really motivates you to continue in this field?
Absolutely. There are multiple levels to this, actually. One being that I am a mother of two beautiful girls, and the one thing that we do know is that 2/3 of all patients living with Alzheimer's disease dementia in the US are women. And I just simply do not want my girls to grow up in a world where they may be at high risk. So it has been a huge sort of passion for me from the very, very early stages of my sort of PhD and postdoctoral fellowship to try to understand what it is that might differentiate men and women. One of the things that we've always thought is that women simply live longer, and that is the pure explanation for why women are at higher risk for dementia. But actually, the story is a lot more complicated, and actually there's really, really amazing stories of triumph as well as, loss for the women's argument here for dementia risk. And I think the reason why I'm so passionate about women's health is because there is such little understanding still of why women may be at greater risk. And in addition to that, I think that also the reason I'm interested is because I love a good challenge. And there are some amazing stories of female resilience. In fact, women tend to live longer with dementia as well, not just live longer in the world. So there's a lot of stories for success in women's health. And what I'm really passionate about is trying to really just dig for those nuggets of gold and really discover the power of being a woman and how we can really harness that to really understand resistance and resilience to Alzheimer's disease dementia.
Great. Love your story. And I shouldn't be surprised that they just made an assumption like that. Oh, just women live longer. And that's
Yes,
it.
I know you would be surprised. I think part of this is because people have often just assumed that the male body is the perfect vessel for understanding science. And women have really been underserved for many, many decades. One of the sad things about, recent history in research is that we had a massive clinical trial for hormone therapy use in the early 2000s called the Women's Health Initiative. And what they were really trying to do was to understand whether hormone therapy would be a protective factor against cardiovascular disease, a whole bunch of different osteoporosis, a whole bunch of different conditions. What they found, in fact, was the reverse, and they had to halt the trial early. And once that trial ended in the early 2000s, we became a massive women's health desert in terms of funding for decades. And only now are we starting to peak back up over the clouds and start to look towards the horizon of women's health again. And so, this is a new dawn, and we're really starting to see incredible researchers enter the field. We're seeing research being funded by the NIH. We're seeing Dr. Jill Biden coming out and really supporting women's health. So there's a lot going on in this space.
It is very exciting, and hopefully we make big strides in the next few years in women's health research because we need it. Fantastic. Okay, my next question is if you can tell us what goals you have related to your work and the improvement of women's health in your specialty specifically.
My question to you, Sydney, is how many hours do you have? I will try to keep it brief because we have so many goals. Right now, I'm actually a part of something called the Ann S. Bowers Women's Brain Health Initiative. It's a huge initiative right now that we've just launched. It's primarily located on the West Coast in the universities of California, but the whole idea of this particular initiative is to try to harness the passion, the energy, but also the state-of-the-art research currently right now in both neuroimaging, biofluid markers, as well as digital tech to try to optimize particularly women's brain health. That's what we're really interested in. We want to launch a few big studies over the next while, one of them focusing primarily on menopause. Most of the research so far at the moment is looking at a deep characterization and understanding of menopause, which is very, very helpful. But those studies often don't think about decades into the future what that might have an impact on for neurodegenerative disease. And then on the other side, we have these amazing studies of Alzheimer's disease and aging, but none of those studies ever think about reproductive history. So what we're trying to do with the Longitudinal Menopause Project, that's our goal over the next while, is to launch this project, is try to marry these two types of research together. The other thing that we're trying to do actually, which bringing back the Women's Health Initiative that I just mentioned before, most of that group, that trial was on women who are over the age of 65. But what we want to do is to actually look at, there were maybe a couple of thousand women who were between the ages of 50 to 55 at the time of the trial. We want to recall those women and find out, because now they'd be about 75 to 80, which is that critical age range of risk for dementia. We want to bring those women back into the clinic, and we want to find out, where are they at? How healthy are their brains? How are they performing with their memory? Can we see anything in their blood in terms of dementia proteins like tau tangles and amyloid plaques? So we've got quite a few things coming over the next while. Those are my goals, to try to optimize women's brain health by understanding their reproductive health.
That's really exciting. And I think longitudinal studies are so important, but can be really hard to accomplish. So
critical and challenging is how I like to put it.
What's a good thing you like to solve puzzles?
I do.
That's amazing. Okay, what are really some of the unique challenges you specifically face when you're conducting your research on these sex differences in preclinical Alzheimer's disease, specifically as well in the context of women's health?
I love that question because it actually links directly into the goals. The reason why we're trying to launch the Longitudinal Menopause Project and the reason we're trying to recall women back from the Women's Health Initiative is because currently there is really this gap between what is available data for us to actually address questions. So, for instance, if I want to understand how menopause impacts later brain health, there really is only a limited number of data sets out there right now that can help us to address these questions. And even then, there's just unfortunately, as I said before, there's really not been a lot of research serving women's health. And so when we think about all these data sets that are currently available on aging, healthy aging, or on Alzheimer's disease, most of these data sets do not or have not ever really truly considered women's reproductive health, whether they took hormone therapy, whether they underwent surgery, what kind of surgery did they, was it taking out ovaries, was it removing ovaries and the uterus, and we just don't have those data available. And so currently my area of research of looking into women's health when thinking about Alzheimer's disease is very hamstrung. There's only so much I can do. So it's a real challenge trying to address the big questions out there that we have right now with the data that we have to hand. Now, we have sort of pieces of the puzzle, and that's very helpful. And some of our work has been some of the pioneering work in the field over the last few years. My postdoctoral fellow, Dr. Gillian Coughlin, is an absolute superstar, and she actually published a study, I would say last year, basically was one of the first studies to show that there is a connection between the age at menopause and whether there's a use of hormone therapy in association with tau tangles in the brain. And so we're starting to gather momentum, but we really, really need to sort of develop these cohorts to be able to ask these questions properly.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. And I like that you obviously are continuing to support your students and postdoc researchers in your lab, because eventually they'll hopefully go and start their own lab and can continue, and then you can work together and
that's exactly right.
Solve all these problems.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, to me, that's the only thing that exists in research. The whole point of research is not to have one person, doing it all. In fact, if anything, there's only so much one person can do, and there's only so much one person can know. So the most important thing that ever happens in a lab is to bring in the young and brightest. In fact, all of the people below me are way brighter than I ever was and can do things that I never could do. We have machine learning and artificial intelligence experts. We have endocrinologists. We have neuroimaging experts. You name it, we've got it. And I'm so grateful for them.
Yeah, that's incredible. And AI that you mentioned is hopefully we can keep utilizing it in research.
Agreed.
Because it's not going away.
No, and also, it's something that we're still really only touching the surface of. But one thing I really hope for is one thing we specialize in the lab is actually gathering as many data sets as we can, primarily aging data sets, Alzheimer's disease data sets. And what we try to do is harmonize, pool these data sets together. So we've got, instead of one study that might have, a couple of hundred people with a certain number of pieces of data, we will have up to 50,000, 60,000 people. And what we're trying to do is develop precision medicine models so that, a woman who is 55, who had XYZ, and she has this amount of cardiovascular risk, what is her likelihood of developing, dementia down the line? And so we're really sort of trying to tease apart the tiny little pieces of knowledge and pieces of data to best understand optimization of people's brain health over time.
Oh, incredible. Earlier, when we first, introduced you, you did mention the NIH specifically and Dr. Jill Biden. Mm-hmm. So in your opinion, how can public health policies better support research and the initiatives that aim to improve women's health outcomes?
I think the biggest thing is getting the word out there. Advocate, advocate, advocate. It's all about holding up the banner and saying we need to do more. We need to do better. Now, that's not to say we are not already doing amazing things. We are. And the support that we receive from NIH and there was another mechanism, ARPA-H as well, through the White House. There's a lot of different sort of funding sources and support. The Alzheimer's Association as well has done a lot. There's a lot of places that recognize the importance of women's health and particularly funding and research. But one thing that we can never have enough of is support and advocacy from public policy in order to keep driving that message. I think the other thing that is really important right now as well is education to the community. There are a lot of women out there who are sitting at home just thinking, do I take hormone therapy? I have hot flushes. I'm really struggling at work. I can't focus. What do I do? I'm really terrified because I thought I wasn't supposed to take it. And even primary care physicians will sometimes not know either. So I think it's education, it's advocacy, it's getting the word out there.
Yeah, completely agree. And then, of course, with today's world and social media, how easy it is to share not only helpful information, but also misinformation can be very scary for not only women, but men as well. So yeah, having more advocacy and getting the actual scientific data out there, I think is very important.
You're absolutely right. And I think related to what you're saying is trust. I think we need to rebuild trust in the scientific community, right?
I love that you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot about, so we have very healthy scientific debates and we question each other all the time and we're constantly critiquing, and that's a good thing in the scientific world. But then when we want to put the message out of what we do know and we feel very confident on, I feel that falls short right now. And I feel having people who are engaging and passionate and know their stuff, getting their word out there, I think is critical right now, because I think COVID really taught us a lot of lessons about getting the science out there and making sure people feel like they know what to rely on.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking as well with the distrust that's currently out there. So yeah, great point. Okay, I would like to close out just with one last question. If there's anything that you would like the public really to better understand about women's health that you feel is overlooked or misunderstood.
So to me, whenever I give a lot of talks now and a lot of talks to the community. And when we get to the Q&A session, there's a lot of very, very concerned women, very concerned women. We talk a lot about risk and vulnerability and susceptibility. These are words that are constantly thrown out in research, but actually, I think the story is much more powerful. I think there is a huge story to tell about women's resilience and women's superpowers. We get less cancer than men. We outlive men. We outlive men even with dementia. We perform better than men on almost any memory task you give us and many other cognitive tasks. And in fact, women tend to get underdiagnosed with dementia because they perform so much better than men. We tend to be much more healthy. We tend to be able to handle being a caregiver. We are a caregiver of both above and below us in generations, and we can handle it. There is a powerful story to tell of women being super women. And it's not just at a sort of cultural, sociological level. There's also a lot of biological stories to tell of women having these very, I guess, powerful resilience factors. And we need to tap into those and harness those for not just the benefit of women, other women out there, but for men as well. So I think right now, rather than feeling a sense of nervousness or concern about what it means to be a woman, we should actually be turning it on its head. There's a lot out there because we simply have not measured women or female mice or female any other animal. We just don't study them. We're not going to have to dig very far to find these nuggets of gold that will be able to show us whole new avenues of protection and resilience. And I think it's a really exciting time in the field, and we should really see it that way.
Thank you so much. And I'm definitely going to keep an eye out on the research that comes out of your lab. Thank you so much for being with us today, Rachel. And it was so nice to have you share your research, your knowledge, even your opinions. And I hope that you had fun as well.
I did. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Sydney.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Real Science and that you'll tune in to future episodes where scientists, just like you, answer questions about their life, their work, and share insights into what it's like to be doing real science. Don't forget to subscribe.